Good morning, Tahisha.
Good morning, Melonya. How are you?
Oh, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. You know how I am.
Come on. It's a beautiful Friday in a amazing country called America.
Mm.
It's not called America, right? It's called the US. Anywho, so what do you have on the table today?
Well, it's so, folks. Anyway, welcome to MT Fridays. let's, let's do some introductions, huh? Where Tahisha and I are filling the brain drain one unscripted conversation at a time. I really feel like I have a brain drain this morning. Yeah, you know what? I wanted to talk about, there's so many things to talk about, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about because of my job and the population that does the client facing folks that serve uh, our clients.
I'm going to
They
make everybody look at your beautiful face, by the way,
oh,
because you're,
thanks. Oh,
yes.
thank
I know
you.
I didn't introduce you. We were. I figured that's why you were leaving it on there because I'm
Oh, you know what?
bad at social things.
No. You know what? I wanted to talk about, when you think about LinkedIn and when you think about those platforms, there are always platforms that are focused on the professional people, right? The professional people. But there's a lot of folks that are not considered the professional people. And a lot of those folks are really struggling these days. And I'm putting forth a proposal to start a wellness program, but to recruit some retired social workers to come in and service our employees, because some of them are dealing with things like homelessness, um, domestic abuse, childcare issues, transportation issues. These are some of the issues that some of our
I just want
workforces.
to go back to where you currently are at. So, just in case our listeners don't know the
Oh, I
great
know.
work that you do,
Yeah.
you work with clients like myself at your institution. I won't name where, but Melania provides support in the
I do training for.
yes.
I'm a training manager for an organization that serves autistic students and individuals. And so when I started thinking about that topic, and like, today's workforce is different than yesterday's workforce, right? And I think we've seen statistics that people are paying for their food on credit cards, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And it made me think about, because again, how do you support someone who is homeless but needs a job, right? And it made me think about some statistics about the number of homeless people who are working, and what do
Well,
companies
and I'm
do
going
to
to pull
support that?
in some language that
Or
is
unhoused.
unhoused. And the reason why I would say unhoused is most people, or a lot of people, think when they think homeless, they think also unemployed. There's a picture in their head because of how we have sort of villainize the idea of being homeless, that the homeless population is a certain group of people who, living on the streets, high mental health issues. And like, honestly, who would not have mental health issues if you're unhoused? So the concept of unhoused came about to imply, like, right now, I don't have housing. I'm unhoused, but that isn't the state that I'm always going to be. Like, homeless almost implies like you've chosen to just live a life without a home, like outside of society. And so when we think about the unhoused, there are so many of us, if you were to take that category and say, well, unhoused in the US could mean you might never own a house, period, because housing prices are just crazy. So I think it brings us back to like, hey, there's a lot of unhoused people. There's a lot of people in the US that financially just are not able to participate in a way that we have come to stereotypically think about the employed in the United States. And many people are employed and are unhoused because it's so expensive in certain geographic regions.
In fact, the statistics were 53% of individuals in homeless shelters and 40% of unsheltered individuals were employed either full or part-time. And I'm just curious that, like, what does that mean for organizations? I mean, how do you support, your employees when that is their reality? You
And
know,
it's I want to also call into the discussion that this is an issue that we are going to see more of as things get more expensive, especially in the US. It's also something we have to think about as the cost of education shifts and changes, and the current generation, Generation Z,
let's see.
prioritizes the expense of going to school, traditional college, in the same way. Just the other day, my son was saying a lot of his friends can't see the value in investing in a 4-year degree anymore when, one, it's not, there isn't as much assistance out there. And then what do you do afterwards? Will you earn enough money to not be unhoused? Can you afford life if you go to college and have what currently in the big, beautiful bill, there's a little piece in there that says if you take out a loan, they will automatically garnish your wages if you can't pay it back. That was not something we ever did, which is another, scary fact for kids coming out of school today. Um, what does that look like if you're unhoused and your wages are being garnished? Will you ever get a house? Will you ever be able to thrive and survive?
Not even
So,
a house, just an apartment, just someplace to
someplace.
dwell, so that's kind of what I'm kind of contemplating these days, just the state of people working and how our organizations um, really taking care of their employees. What are you talking about today?
Well, I am talking about the rollbacks in recently there's been a couple of announcements regarding the LGBTQ plus community. Particularly, I'm concerned about uh, the removal of the press number 3, which was the option in the suicide crisis lifeline that was specifically for LGBTQ plus youth to use on the 988 suicide line. And so that has been removed. And it's particularly disturbing because if you didn't know it, June is Pride Month, LGBTQ plus Pride. And I find it very upsetting that this is announced this month, as if to say, not that it should be announced any month, but as if to say, um, you know, we have no value in this group of people. Um, and so here's a stat from that I pulled. Since September 2022, nearly 1.3 million calls and texts have gone through this specialized service. Um, and so from the Trevor Project, James Black, who's their CEO, said, and this is true across the board, suicide prevention should really be about people, not politics. And I'm paraphrasing there a little bit. But the idea of targeting a suicide line because you don't like, and I'm going to say like, the people that are using it, because you hate gay people, is just horrific. It is the first step, I believe, in a targeted genocide of LGBTQ plus people in the United States.
Now, what is this? Who is funding this hotline? Or I mean, what is it?
So the
Federal?
United States, so we do provide funds to it, and it's the National Crisis Line. And so when you call the suicide hotline, there are certain specialized lines in there that you can press in order to reach someone who will hopefully,
Specialized in
specialize in your community and have a little bit more understanding, because we do know that even healthcare providers that have a little bit of context around what you're dealing with do better, right? I don't see an orthopedic surgeon if I need heart surgery, right? Like, we're able to understand that and rationalize that like, we specialize different doctors, we specialize different units. Why not, if you really want to provide great targeted suicide prevention services, think about the community you're serving. You don't want to unintentionally harm someone at the lowest point in their life because you don't understand what they're going through. So to remove this is just why. And I could see if the service was not being used, right? If it was just, you look at the statistics and much like, I think there's a county in your state where they said 100% of the people voted for our current president. Like, I could understand if you pulled the stats and it was like 0% of the population uses this, but that number of calls, 1.3 million calls and texts. That means possibly 1.3 million people thought about the act of suicide, reached out to that line, and, their life was saved. And the other thing that happened simultaneously is that SCOTUS upheld the Tennessee ban. And so what that was just the other day on June 18th, the Supreme Court 6-3 upheld Tennessee's ban on puberty blockers and hormones for trans minors. Now, the thing I want to say about that is the decision to transition is usually a family discussion, and it is not one that is not undertaken lightly. And why I'm going to relate this to the suicide hotline is that 26% of transgender and gender questioning teens reported a suicide attempt in the past year versus 5% of cis boys and 11% of cis girls. That means that the upholding of that ban, which opens up possible bans in other states, that population itself thinks about suicide more, and I can think in my head why. And then you pull the suicide crisis line as you take away some of the affirming care. And even, in that state, I can imagine that physicians in that state and healthcare providers in that state are probably feel like they can't even have the discussion anymore because the nation is so anti talking about the LGBTQ plus experience, and particularly transgender youth experience. So very disturbing, very upsetting to me that these two kind of happen around the same time in a political climate where we seem to be able to get a lot of agreement around targeting a group of people in the US who need protection, need support more than, that type of vitriol. And this is I I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, I think didn't the administration also cut funding for the veteran suicide? Um, you know, we talk about mental health in this in this country oftentimes when there's a shooting of some sort. We talk about, oh, mental health, right? But the truth of the matter is, without being hyperbolic, this country does not care about health. It does not care about the well-being of its citizens, right? I mean, because mental health is health. It's just as important as going to see a physician, or if you're sick, or going to the hospital if you're sick. But we don't even support that. We're cutting funding for that as well. um, this country is positioned to really not care about its um, its 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 citizens, and the fact that apparently this they rolled back um, access for the LGBTQ plus community to have access to mental health professionals, in a time of contemplating suicide, and they cut those funds this year. I mean, this month. It's really again. I follow these two women who it's I forgot their I've had it is the name of their podcast, but they often say the point is the cruelty is the point. It's to be cruel, right? So I mean, they could have cut that anytime, but you decided to do it with Pride Month, right? Because you want to be cruel, you know.
The cruelty of it, and to show that no matter how much you celebrate, at the end of the day, we're in charge. And even though you may want to say like, hey, we are in this country, and the whole point is to say like, hey, we're not invisible, like, we exist. And then to cut services is such a controlling thing to do.
But, well, I just saw the somewhere, and I have to fact check it, but I believe that Trump has removed the bust of Martin Luther King from the White House. And I'll be honest with you, my first thoughts were, so what? People from marginalized communities have been through so much. And here's the thing that folks forget about folks from marginalized communities: they have resilience that far exceeds those who have never been challenged, right? So when I saw that, it's like, so what? That's performative. Yeah, okay, you remove the bust, right? But you're not going to erase MLK, right? Not from my heart, right? Not from the stories that are shared verbally, right? You can erase them from books or whatever, but there's something about the language, that the communication before streaming and before social media. People talk to each other, they shared stories, and in this case, you know there has to be a push within people's communities to make certain that the folks in the LGBTQ communities, we can have parades, and we can have Juneteenth, and we can have these other things, but the real work is in the community, making certain that the LGBTQ people in your community have the support that they need, that young people have the support that they need, right? So who do you call in your community if you are struggling? What resources are there? And I think, because we are in the state that we are in, and so many things are being attacked because they don't line up as uh, the dominant race, right? Then um, uh, we have to be more collaborative and share information and protect our own.
Well, and so I agree with you to a point. And then what I want to call in is that when we say to ourselves, okay, well, the community is going to protect itself, right? In the LGBTQ plus community, what if you're not out? The thing is, there is a the there is a slight difference there, because if I'm sitting in Tennessee and I am a kid in a
You
rural,
might not have
uh,
community.
yes, I may not have any community other than my national community, other than being able to go and look someplace and see, hey, I am not a weirdo. I am not strange. There are other people who feel like this. I am not alone. And we talk about the crisis of loneliness in this country. And there is a loneliness to feeling like I am the only one who thinks this way. I am the only, like, it would be similar to, as an autistic person, feeling like I'm the only person who thinks that what's wrong with me. There is also a high rate of suicide in autistic people. Um, and I think some of that is the undiagnosis and the I'm alone in this. And when you think about the rates of suicide in marginalized populations, some of that comes from I feel isolated in my world. And it says to us, hey, the only place you can be is you have to find some place where there's community like you. And that's not what we want if we are a quote United States, right? Like in a United States, we should be able to have some things that we have a consensus on. And truly, as a healthcare provider, being like the act of not, there are so many rules and so many social compacts about suicide, right? Like it's not something we support as a in the world, period. Like I think you can go to any text and you'll see that suicide is not supported. The act of suicide. And so to target this area, I find very disturbing, because as the physicians organizations, the nurses organization, every organization should be calling to task this administration, because this does not make America healthier again. It hides the mental health crisis that goes on in our country. Or maybe quietly what they're saying is, we're not going to actively go after you, but perhaps you can just self-eliminate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my concern. My concern is for the person who doesn't have community where they are. My concern is also for Black individuals and Hispanic individuals who now begin to see nothing in this country that looks like that. No leaders, no women who are displayed as being leaders in this. What does that say to me? That says, what are my options here? Are my options only in my little small community that I'm living in, that I will ever rise to any type of success? Does it say that, in our country, we don't acknowledge those people? Does it say the only way that I can be a woman in leadership is if I look a certain way, if I behave a certain way? We're supposed to be a country of freedom of speech and freedom to really express and be innovative. Part of innovation is like conflicting ideas. Challenge me, because maybe you have something that's going to make my ideas better. But instead, we seem to be supporting this idea of, well, nationally, we don't really want to have diversity. We don't really want equity. We don't really want to include you. But you can have your own little community someplace where you can do the things that you decide to do. And I think
Well,
we called that
I don't
something. It
even
was
think
called segregation.
I don't even think that's not even the case. That's not even the case. It's not even. the truth of the matter is that if you're not a part of the majority, then you're not going to have peace in this country. And I say that because I think within the last few days, in Albany, our state capital, there was a 21-year-old Black man hanging from a tree, right? And so we've entered the, and they're talking about, well, it's a suicide. Black men don't hang themselves from trees, and that's the and the suicide um, excuse was used a lot during the lynching of Black people, right? So we've entered that phase again, and I've started to do a little research because somebody was saying in the Carolinas there have been 3 lynchings, and someplace Alabama there was one, but they're calling them suicide. So even in your own communities, we see places we've seen throughout the history of this country that even in a segregated country, in your own community where you are minding your own business, right? You can't have peace, right? What was
The
that?
story of Black Wall Street, right?
The story of Black Wall Street. There's so many of those stories, but what was that famous bar that for LGBTQ that there was that they were
Stonewall.
Stonewall, right?
Yeah, queer bars were frequently raided
Right.
during the time period they want to return to.
Right. And so, but what I'm
You didn't
saying is
be
that
on your own.
what I'm saying is that you can say, oh, it's not enough for folks with this mindset to let you have peace. Okay, you don't want us in the mainstream. Well, okay, we'll just mind our own business. We'll just meet within ourselves. Nope, we can't have that either. Right? It's just like if you're not white, you're not and Christian and male, then you really your existence is threatened.
You are at risk. And so I want to just, so since we touched on this, I this morning, because I'm in love with ChatGPT, I asked it a question. And here's what I asked it. I asked it from a historical perspective, can you identify and analyze other cautionary tales from a human history where attacks on LGBTQ plus individuals or immigrants, because that is the other group. We didn't talk about this yet or bring them in yet, but immigrants are under attack, right? Everywhere in this country, have led to broader restrictions on the general population. Specifically, I'm interested in examples that illustrate how these targeted attacks served as a precursor to the wider erosion of civil liberties, effectively opening the gates to harmful behaviors and societal acceptance of discrimination. So I asked it to give me some relevant historical events. And so what it came back with was throughout history, targeted campaigns against marginalized communities, whether they are based on sexual orientation, nationality, or ethnicity, have often frequently been the precursor to broader erosions of civil liberties. So it gave me 4 cautionary tales of how attacking LGBTQ plus people or immigrants set the stage for sweeping rights restrictions and along with wider human rights implications and serve as a warning and echo today's climate. Okay, so the first one it gave me, the Nazi persecution of homosexuals from 1933 to 1945. And I'll put these up someplace, but basically what it told me was that shortly after Hitler's rise to power in January 1933, the Nazi regime reinvigorated what they called paragraph 175 of the criminal code, German criminal code, which criminalized what they called unnatural indecency between men. And so between that time period, it's estimated that 100,000 men were arrested as homosexuals, and some 50,000 were imprisoned, and thousands were sent to concentration camps. So basically, this gave the machinery and ideology for the prosecution against gay men. Legal surveillance, the idea of forced labor soon expanded. So it started there. And from there, it went to Jewish people, the Rama, which are the gypsy populace. It's the official term for what is a gypsy population over there. Political dissidents. They also targeted Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, the disabled, anyone they considered undesirable. So it started there and it moved outward. So that's why I find this very concerning, this target of these two specific groups. And it was the normalization of, quote, state sanctioned hatred that made the genocide that happened there conceivable.
Yeah, and so we oh, again, going back to the undocumented immigrants, right? So, in terms of snatching these people from, you know, masked people, just snatching bodies and taking them wherever without due process, right? Well, that erodes due process, not just for undocumented immigrants, it erodes due process for us all, right? Anytime, I mean, because never think that pistol won't be turned towards you, you know. There's that saying, that poem, first they came for them, then they came, but who will come for, you know, who will speak for
Who
you,
will speak? Who
right?
is left to speak?
But when you start to see your constitutional rights, the right to free speech, right? You censor one group. Well, and if you do that effectively, that means you can censor whoever you want to. The right to assemble and protest without being. There was a young person. Oh God, what state was it in? It might have been Idaho, who during the protests, the No Kings protest, was killed. You didn't hear about that, right? But the right to assemble is you know, it's a right of this country. But when you start, because you focus on one group, LGBTQ, minorities, undocumented immigrants, whoever it is, when you erode their rights, it gives the government permission to erode everyone's rights.
Particularly in a country that functions along precedents, right? So if I can find a case that proves that we allowed this before, many of our laws are established on that. So if we're allowing this for this group, well, why can't I do it to women? Women are way too vocal. They're way too educated. We should figure out a way to uneducate them. Oh, okay. Well, we were allowed to do this with the LGBTQ plus population. We're allowed to pull ICE on people who are here, following the rules. Why can't I then apply it to everyone?
You will, and you will. I mean, we have seen. I think I cannot underestimate the horrendous times that we live in. So last week, or it might have been this week, that poor Black woman in Atlanta who was brain dead, but
Yeah.
forced to incubate a child because of their abortion laws. That woman died in February. March, April, May, June, 4 months on a ventilator. And people were like, well, she's not alive. She wasn't alive. When you are brain dead, you are dead. You can have machineries that will keep the body functioning to some extent, but you have incubated a child in a dead woman's body. Again, the experimentation on Black people in this country, that's just another example of experimentation. Can we grow a fetus in a dead body? The idea that a woman doesn't, in order to donate your organs, there has to be consent, either consent from the pre-consent that yes, I consent to have my organs donated, or the family consents, right?
Yes.
There was no consent in this.
And the family didn't agree to it.
They
They
did
didn't
not
want it.
want to. They did not want this. But yet and still, even in death.
But the law that we allowed to get passed in this country allowed it. So
But
then think about Tennessee and think about all of these other states that are passing restrictive practices and laws. If you think because you're in a state that doesn't allow this, that someone isn't going to bring something from another state as a, well, this happened here, let's test it here,
right.
you are wrong.
And Texas and Florida are the testing grounds for all sorts of heinous.
Let's
But
just call it heinous.
What I found very interesting about the fact that they had this dead woman incubate this child. How many women have been arrested because they've had miscarriages, and they were arrested because of the handling of that fetus body? Isn't that interesting? But look at how you're treating this human's body, this woman's body. I mean, where we are as a country and as women, I do not understand why there is not a collective something.
Well, the one thing I will say is, if anything gave me a little bit of hope, it was the No Kings rallies and marches that happened this past weekend, where millions of people turned out to have themselves seen and to have their presence seen, as we do not want an authoritative dictatorship here in the United States. It is against everything that the United States was founded on. And it's not just about not having a central king. It is about being able to preserve your voice, to have the diversity of voices that as a country has made us strong. If you can't call out something that is immoral or wrong or harmful, then what is the point of saying we are the country built on liberty and freedom and justice for all?
Yeah, we've
Doesn't
never
seem
been
like
that
that.
country. We've just never been that country. I mean, it's always
But
been.
it was the goal,
It's the
right? It was,
idea.
and now we're going so far against that goal that, this is truly a test of the Constitution. This is truly a test of, are we everything that we say that
It's a test
we
of the
are?
people. It is a test of the people, because we have seen that the Congress is failing to uphold the Constitution. The Supreme Court is failing, right? The court, some on the courts are they are fighting to, they're bringing lawsuits and things of that nature. But really, it's going to be the voice of the people. And if and I'm like, when is the general strike? We need to, really, you got to shut down the economy.
Well, and I think honestly, we I'm not going to say that this wasn't in the making for longer than this, what is it, 6 months that this current administration has been in place. There have been movements towards destabilizing the right for all people to have a voice in politics for at least a decade. This type of stuff doesn't just happen because the politically people were being placed and the majority was shifting towards what our political outlook looked like, right? So when you have a government that sees no problems with corporate sponsorships for many politicians, whether that be judges taking gifts, whether that be politicians being funded by companies, whether that be presidents announcing new product lines that they're selling to you. This speaks to what, what I hate about this country, which is that it's a capitalistic democracy. Like, it's not really democracy.
Mm-mm.
It's democracy that lays over capitalism. Like, really, the United States is one big corporation trying to make profit at this point. And sadly, the ideals that perhaps we started out with have been shifted away.
We are a plutocracy. We are a plutocracy. We are a government for the rich, being governed by the rich. We are not a democracy.
And the truth is, places like big corporations, they fund both sides. Like, if you really look at the playbook, they're sponsoring Democrats, or they're sponsoring Republicans, because at the end of the day, they have the money to throw at both sides, and whoever wins, they have a stake in that, right? Like, not to call out Walmart, but Walmart is famous for funding both sides, for supporting both sides, for playing, both sides of the fence. But that I see as less problematic than strictly funding a particular agenda. Because at least in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's a company. They realize multiple people shop at their place and they're just throwing money anywhere because they have it. And they're just rolling the die and saying, whoever wins, we've got a stake in this. I'm more disturbed by companies that truly are showing their, this is the idea I'm trying to push, because companies technically are not individuals, and perhaps they should not be able to fund any side or both sides or whatever. Like, there used to be corporations weren't allowed to do those type of political.
There should be no money in there should be no money in politics,
in government.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
There is it just and the problem is, we keep looking. I'm an independent, but you keep looking towards the Democrats to do something, but they're bought and sold too. You know what I mean? They have corporate sponsors too.
Which is why I mentioned Walmart, because they have funded Democrats and they have funded Republicans, and they're basically just about like, who comes to our stores, who's buying, who's our buyer population, and whatever that looks like today is who we're gonna support, or who we're gonna fund, because they're about the bottom line of their profit.
Yeah, but I'm still boycotting Walmart for rolling
back.
Well,
I'm not saying that anybody should shop there, and I'm not saying that anybody shouldn't shop there, but
I'm just saying.
I'm pointing out that companies are companies.
I'm just tired of it.
That they care about any of us.
I'm tired of the corporate overlords. I'm tired of the dark money. I'm tired of we had where we are now is really quite dystopian, to be quite honest. And I don't want to bring anybody down on a Friday, but I mean, you had Elon Musk trying to bribe people and to vote for Trump, right? Paying people, supposedly, offering to pay people and have some sort of a lottery or whatever. I mean, it was just like blatant, like, what are you doing? And then trying to putting millions in dollars and trying to sway a race for, for a judge. I don't know if that was in Wisconsin. I forgot where that was, but he lost. But the point is that we're just going to buy the government, and you poor peasants are just going to lose your rights, and you're going to just succumb, right? The idea of somebody, imagine somebody, trying to openly buy, an election. And that's what happened. That's what happened. Rich people bought, funded, this past election.
Well,
And when you fund stuff like that, you always expect something in return.
oh, absolutely. It's like a date, right? Like there's all the so the
Oh my
so
God! Wait, where is this going?
so so I had a conversation with my daughter who is single again. Shouldn't have announced that, but I did. But like, so she's like in a different mindset right now, and we had a conversation about what is the expectation on a date, and we were talking about men in this instance. But like, there is this expectation when people go on dates that like if you paid for it, like you like something, right? Like it's unspoken, it's still out there. I knew it shouldn't be, but I feel like that is a great analogy for the old school thinking in the United States and political funds. Like those they didn't give that money just to be. They gave
Generous.
that money
They want
so
something
that they
in
could come
return.
back and say, hey, guess what? I don't know if you know this, but I'm under an indictment for something, and maybe you can swing your political power. Like, what happened with wasn't like Elon Musk under investigation for something? Like,
A
where's this
lot,
going?
a lot.
Like, we're like,
Elon Musk said before during the election, if he doesn't get elected, I might go to jail. That's what he said. And so then they put him in charge of making certain that he eliminated all the agencies that were investigating him.
and like Elon, like maybe just go to jail. Because like other people have gone to jail, and like we know white collar crime is not the same as like he wasn't gonna be in general population. Martha Stewart went to jail. Like she seems okay. Like she made it out. She did her time. Props to her. Like you do bad, you go to jail. Even rich people, if you do bad, you go
No,
to jail.
no,
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 they don't.
no.
Only if they're women.
Right.
See,
Only you're
only if
right.
you're a woman
Only if you're a woman, right?
and you're ethical. Like I'm not saying she was ethical about that at all, but like, and I'm not Martha Stewart. Please don't come at me. Like I don't know enough to speak on that, but like I will say, like I give her props for like she went to jail. Like
Well, she didn't have a choice.
she didn't have a choice because, well, I mean, I'm sure if she got really savvy into it, she could have found some like unscrupulous
Well,
people that
but
would
people were
support.
a little
She
bit
was
different back then. I
they
mean, people have been unscrupulous throughout history, but
yes,
the climate was different. Now you just,
which is why I say this was a buildup. So like this
yeah.
has been like this didn't just happen in 6 months because there's often discussions about, well, back in the day, this never would have happened. Well, what shifted? Like, what did people look at or rich people look at and say, like, hey, we don't want that to happen. And I'm doing some
You know
shady
what I
stuff. So
think?
let's put some things in place.
I think I think people were more civic minded. And so like I said, it's a government for the people, by the people, of the people, right? And so I think that we all became very complacent in thinking that this democracy was something that was always going to be, that
That is on autopilot,
it was
that you
gonna
don't
say,
have
like,
to protect it,
it's
that
on
you don't have to
autopilot.
participate, that
Right,
you don't have to
right.
vote.
And so I think there were things that happened, and I find it very interesting because oftentimes Reagan is put on this pedestal for being kind of the example of how Republicans used to be in like the good old days. But he did some things that put all of these things in motion. He started, his move with firing the folks, the pilots who were on strike in the airlines, and firing them to bust unions. Right? He started the
union busting is the start of this, right? So if you don't have a collective voice of the people, if you can't participate in a union, that will, that's where that we need to go on a strike. We need to walk away. It comes from the idea that now the union, whenever there's power, there's always corruption. So the union did get a bad name for having corruptibility in that. But I think any source of power is going to have that. We have less unions with less power in the United States than ever before. So we have less collective bargaining. Most of us fear for our jobs because we're afraid, individually, if I say something, if I call something out, well, they're just going to get rid of me. So I'm just going to be quiet and I'm just going to let it happen, which establishes this idea that companies, businesses, governments can do whatever they want because we are individually afraid of becoming unhoused, becoming, unemployable. Because what happens if you don't have employment in the US? We have no social system in place to protect you. It's going away. And Reagan is interesting because he begins the first targeted media campaign, or he kind of reinforces the media campaign against Black people in the United States. He brings about the idea of the welfare queen, right? Like that's during his administration, and what that looks like. If you look at the stats, there are more white people using social services and support like that than there are Black people or marginalized groups. And so he builds this, and I even remember the case was like one woman, and that case that they highlighted was even more sort of blown up. Like there were things that she did, but they exacerbated the things that she did and created this profile. Like this is what people on welfare, this is how they're taking your money. This is what that looks like, and this is the harm of that. When it was completely not true. So when I think about it as an actor, right, it makes sense because actors are all about what is the public thinking? What is my persona? Like the actor that is not who they are or what they represent. They're constantly putting out this like marketing advertising thing. So he was very well versed in that, very well aware of like what your persona does to the way that the public responds to you. And so that's the first time we go from politics as like maybe it has to be more about government and civil service to, well, what if it could be more about like, ooh, shiny and like politicians as celebrities. Like, I think he's really the first celebrity politician. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were some before him, but he established that.
Yeah.
Yes. But he establishes more of like that celebrity. Because I do remember Nancy Reagan and like her fashion, and people talked about her fashion. And I don't, other than Jackie Kennedy, I don't remember that being the sole thing that we kind of talked about. They were fancy, and they were not, he was not like Jimmy Carter. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
And I was young when he came to office, but I do remember that we went from peanuts. Do you remember the snack? The presidents used to have snacks. Jimmy Carter had peanuts. And then President Reagan had jelly beans. Remember that at all? Funny. That is the one thing I remember from my childhood about those two presidents. Because I was like, I like jelly beans. And my mom was like, absolutely not. It's
Yeah,
like
that's funny.
peanuts. Who likes that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I the times that we live in are very, um,
Troubling,
yeah,
horrific,
yeah.
scary. Should you move to another country? What country would that be? Saw a joke by a comedian where they were talking about, you know, Japanese people are not coming here because way better in Japan, and that if they are coming here, it's really to get like content for comedy.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
as in, if they're a comedian, like there's a little bit of oppression that has to happen to make a joke about something. So
Well,
it
I'm gonna.
was a fascinating clip. Like, why would you come here? The streets are dirty.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you the biggest joke of this of last week was that squeaky tank, man. That squeaky tank. I remember watching something, and before probably the first clip that I saw, I'm watching, and I was like, is that tank squeaking?
It
But
definitely was. It was, and like it was squeaking. And the other thing is, other people have called this out, but like the military that were, I'm not even going to say marching,
they weren't.
walking.
They were
It
walking.
that was less organized than a pride parade where like people get together and they just dance it. That's what it felt like, but without joy. It was sort of
Yes.
like, why are you like? I was like, I wondered. I'm like, are they just saying to each other, why are we here?
The
Do
dude
your
carrying
shoes
the,
fit? What's happening?
the dude carrying the drone. It's like it felt like, I swear to God, with the squeaky, the tanks look little, the squeaky tank, the dude carrying the drone. It felt like a toddler's parade. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and then they put that parade next to uh, 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 China's
Oh, I
and
think like China, like they were saying China is mocking, and they were like, "Look, like
oh my goodness! I mean,
I
they're
don't want us to have a parade like China
no,
does, to be honest,
I
but it
don't.
was sort of like, why did we do this? How much did this cost? And wait, you spent this much, but you shut down the suicide hotline? Like, why? Why?
Well, we know why.
Like, nobody is like, no, I like 1.3 million people didn't show up there, but 1.3 million people used this suicide
Yeah,
line.
yeah,
Like, really? Like, this is where your priorities are? And it was just such a like disgrace to our military for you
yes.
to be like, today's my birthday, and
And did you
and I'm shutting down VA suicide.
did
The
you
veterans
and one of the
suicide piece of
songs
it.
that
Let's have
they
a parade.
one of the songs that they selected was a song, what was it called, something son, one of the songs that that he was saluting to. There's the song that there was, I think there was some mini protests going on in the army because the song represented um, rich people who dodged the draft in Vietnam, which he did. And he's saluting to it, and they're playing that song, and it's like, dude, they're trolling you, and you don't even know it. They're not they're not walking in step. They're not, it's like this is like, really nobody was feeling.
My my grandfathers were both in the military. I've dated some military people, and my knowledge of the like I believe that all have like they're pretty ingrained on how to march.
Yes.
And yeah, that was not a march. It was a walk. And I'm actually glad that it shows that, because you always have fear when you have a fascist government, authoritarian
The name of it
government.
is "Fortunate Son" by Creedence Clearwater Revival, which was
Why?
it was talking about the people who had so much money who could avoid going into the Vietnam War, which he was one of them, right?
Well, it the better thing to look at was that the protests, for the most part, um, really highlighted what the United States wants, what the public wants. There are, and if you think that in the United States there are more billionaires than general public, that's wrong. If we can just hold on to the fact that this is a country for the people, by the people, and the people are not billionaires. And stop letting billionaires sell you the idea that you can be a billionaire too. Because here's the truth, we can't all be billionaires. If we were all billionaires, then they would be trillionaires or whatever comes after that. Okay. The truth is, we hold the power. Let's stop like looking up to these people with tons of money, because more of us don't have money and more of us will never be super rich.
Not only do people who have money, but people who have all the money and no souls. You have the richest man in the world taking eliminating aid for health, for children, for HIV victims. You're taking food out of the mouths of under resourced people, taking health care away from vulnerable people. So it's not even just got all the money in the world, all the money and zero soul. And on that note, we've reached an hour.
Wow, you're like, I'm gonna keep it happy.
Yes, yes, yes,
We're ending on the soulless.
yes.
um I do want to say probably this will not go anywhere and no one will see it, because we've said some words that get targeted on the internet when it comes to algorithms. So
Nothing like freedom of speech.
yes, because the algorithm targets certain content and words and political dissidents. And so this podcast, for anyone who, or this event, for anyone who tunes in or listens or jumped in or watches it and finds it, I will be surprised, because we said some things that are not, quote, allowed. So
So
probably
please,
get
so so
quiet banned.
so please like and oh my, where's my
Oh, there's a banning happening.
please like and subscribe. Of course, you know what? I never get a phone call. If I get a phone call, it's from you, right? So are you calling me?
I'm not calling you. You know
And
who's
of course,
calling you?
your phone is
Facebook. They're like, you've been restricted.
on the other side of the phone. But so that's why it's important to like and subscribe so we can get the information out. But I do have something on a good note. I want to end on a good note. This week I had the pleasure of being able to do a workshop for cancer survivors for one of our cancer institutes, the Roswell Park Cancer Institute here in Buffalo. And so it was really joyous for me to be able to talk to them about what it looks like in their new normal and setting goals and just making the most out of life, right? And so that is something that just filled my heart.
I
Yeah.
love it. And I think in the start you were talking about trying to create some type of program or programming for the unhoused that employers could sort of replicate something you're working on where you are.
Yeah, not just
So
even the unhoused, but just as an organization is only a company is only as strong as the people, and if the people, the people, we the people are going through some things in this country right now, but when you then expand it to financial, right, and just other societal issues like again domestic abuse. These are some of the it's trash collection day, so the Indy has to
Friday.
she has
Hi,
to
Indy,
yeah
making
she
an
has
appearance.
she's the silent but not so silent co-host. But it is it's necessary, when our HR department and our managers in some of these organizations are doing social work. they are doing social work.
So just to clarify for anyone listening, Melonya is looking for social workers who want to volunteer to, and this isn't what you asked for, but I'm going to throw it out there, volunteer to help on creating a template maybe, or working on a project, either for her company or, and this is a volunteer, something she's doing outside of that, outside of the job piece. To create sort of and test a template that could possibly be replicated other places, to support, because we know that people are going to be, having more needs, social work needs. And so, she's looking at trying to, what would that look like? So if
Well,
you want to help her, you want to work on that,
yeah,
reach out to her, please.
yeah, or even with thought leadership in terms of how to make this even more successful. Again, this is something I'm proposing to the company that I work for. We have a goal towards employee well-being, and it's really to address a survey question that we had, or survey response, and trying to increase the number of people who feel that they are being supported both professionally and personally in their lives. And when you have a population of people who are, like I said, they may be unhoused, they may be dealing with domestic violence, they may have transportation issues. Buffalo is not a huge metro where you can, it's not a New York or Philadelphia or Chicago where you can get on subways and you have a really robust mass transit. So getting to work for some people is really a challenge. Childcare, and if this administration goes through with eliminating stuff like it's not early push. What is it called? Uh, for the little ones before they go to school.
Oh, a Head Start.
Head Start.
Yeah.
That is going to put a lot of.
I went to it early.
Yeah, yeah. It
This
used
is
to be
great.
called early push. I'm really going way back. But Head Start, these are stressors on families. They're stressors on individuals, and these stressors are represented in the population that comes to work. And everybody doesn't work in an office. Everybody doesn't sit behind a computer, right? And we don't always know what resources are out there, to assist us. So I'm just wondering, with all of these challenges, what role will companies take, and will they become innovative? Like, will some companies actually hire a social worker to be a part of their,
Of the team.
their,
When so many jobs are going away, right?
yeah.
Like, so I'm gonna, because we went over usually we do an hour and we talked a lot about things, and then I pulled this back. Can we go 90 minutes? Because I don't just want to because I want to throw out that what you're looking for could form a more template for other organizations to utilize. So yes, this is a testing at your organization, but this work group, what comes out of this, or this thought leader group, what comes out of this could become a replicable template to not just use where you are, but some pieces to kind of help other organizations that have similar barriers,
Yeah,
because this is about the employees,
yeah,
not
it
the
is.
general public. So thinking about employees and the resources for those who are working at organizations, what would that template look like? And would you be interested in kind of becoming
Well,
part of a thought group around
yeah.
that?
Well, I don't even, this is something I just proposed, so I don't even know if it's going to be adopted. But, I've formed a group called the Workplace Empowerment Council to address some of the challenges that our employees, are facing. And one of the areas that we wanted to look at is employee well-being and what that could potentially look like. And so, being able to really, I outlined some potential areas that we might look at, like having a campaign to really make certain that employees understand the benefits of the EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Do you understand it, what it can do, what it can't do, how it can be a resource for you, how it can be a resource for anybody in your family or anybody in your household that doesn't even have to be related to you? Do you understand your mental health benefits from your insurance? Everybody's got a different level, a different package. But do you understand, if you need mental health services, what is afforded to you through your benefits? The third thing was being able to connect people to free digital mental health services or local mental health services or support systems, and being able to have a resource, resources at the tip of your fingers to that are free. Because again, when people are making a lot of money, they can have the best, the highest insurance that might cover everything. But you might be younger and you might be in pretty good health, so you have a high deductible insurance plan. So before you can even utilize some of their benefits, you've got to meet this high deductible, which kind of means that you don't have insurance. So what kind of free resources can we get to, and connect people to if they need it, so it can be at their fingertips? And the other thing that I put forth was, because our so, our population sometimes has a less stable foundation. um, what can we do to help them with, there was a case where you've got some person who is unhoused, but they can't lose their job.
Mhm.
So how do you support this? And I thought that maybe if we can utilize the support of retired social workers who wouldn't mind, donating a day, you know.
Well, and so I would say to that, the only reason why I'm saying create a usable template if you're going to call on volunteers, um, is that you're still an organization. So I would say that out of this could come a replicable
Yeah.
template that other places could use. So if you're interested in perhaps talking with Melonya about what that would look like, whether that be volunteering with her, because this is innovation idea at the
Mhm.
very concept of
Yes.
organic thought right now. But I do think I love this idea because more organizations than just yours struggle with a similar challenge. And perhaps what would it look like to pool uh, the resources of a whole bunch of different minds thinking about this, and what does that look like in your area, or even in the county or the state, to like, could you create a network? Could this become a pooling research? Could you get funds? Like, what does that look like? But that is bigger than, as you said, you. So she's throwing it out to the group. Whoever is listening, would you like to like participate in this? Think about this. Hope, like, from the initial, this is an idea, to like, what could this look like on a bigger scale? So throwing that out to any of the listeners, because this is something that I think will be more on people's thoughts as some of the things that we used to get from the government as those assistance programs start to get smaller or disappear. What does it look like for organizations to begin to pick up that lift? And like, what does it look like to put that into your budget? What does it look like to accommodate those needs, because your greatest strength is your employees and the people who we have an obligation as employers, in my mind, to support our employees. If you want people to be part of the goal that you're headed towards, you have to also be part of the goals they're headed towards. And being unhoused is not something that people choose. So, what are you doing to help with that? So, you
Yeah.
know, and that's often forgotten, is the people that are the support and the base of organizations. What are you doing for them?
Yeah.
How are you helping to make their lives easier so that they want to work with you?
And stay, you stay where,
Engaged, and stay engaged at
and
the organization.
yeah, and you tend to stay where you feel that you are,
Supported, respected, loved. I,
yeah,
the
all of
word
those
love
things.
is so vague, but all of those things.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being loved at work. You know what I mean? Because but especially this type of work that we do, you know, you should love the people. You should love your work. Not from that capitalist. You know you were born to work, but when you serve people, you should have a heart for people. And if you want the people that are interfacing with your clients and your customers, if you want them to have a heart for the people that they're serving, you have to demonstrate having a heart for them.
Yes.
You do.
So I love that. Um, your information is in our contact stuff. So please reach out to her, and she will be
Yep.
very happy to hear from you.
Yes, you can.
I just want to, um, I was going to highlight something. Now I forgot. Oh, here's what I wanted to just come back to. I talked about the loss of the suicide line, but there is. So I just want to just recognize that the way that if you want to continue to support the LGBTQ plus community, please support your local pride centers, your local youth groups. The Trevor Project, the Trevor Project, please donate, support them. HRC, ACLU, these are all organizations that have made vows to legally challenge acts against, protections, public campaigns. All of that is important, particularly for this. Affirming clinicians, they're ramping up their telehealth. There's a lot of interest in doing telehealth or AI, or sort of ways to help address the shortage that we know is going to happen. So what does it look like to support, um, uh, the community? So and supporting PFLAG. PFLAG is the parents group. So make sure that you're donating to those groups if you have the money to donate. And so that was my only close.
Yes, donate or volunteer.
Yes, donate or volunteer. Now is the time. If you have the access, the funds, donate, volunteer. We have to use our voice. We
Show
have
the
to make
love.
stuff. Yes, show
Show the
design.
humanity. I just saw a quote this morning that said that said that when a society starts to lose empathy, um, basically it's kind of the fall of society, you know, and that's where we are now. We as individuals, and it really
We don't want to be Rome. Remember
yeah,
what happened to Rome?
it breaks my heart really to see our country. Our country has always been divided, but there are reasons or things being orchestrated outside of our country that benefits when we as a country are divided. The people are divided, and and I don't ever want to lose empathy for anyone on this planet, and I don't want to lose empathy for the people within this country, and I don't want people to lose empathy for me. right? And so if you really believe in a society that is kind and is just and is powerful and is strong, then you have to live your values, whatever that means to you in whatever capacity it means. For me, it means showing up here on Fridays and talking about whatever it is that we talk about and we share. It means doing my sovereignty sage, which I've been falling off on. I got to pick myself up and get back into doing that women's empowerment podcast. It means being really intentional and really caring about the people that serve the mission for that company, that organization I work for, that serve vulnerable people, that serve, some of these kids have really um, troubling behaviors. People get hurt on that job. And I stopped to think about the parents where this child goes home to, right? You might have a job, you might have other children, and you're dealing with a real challenge. So our ability to help these students and individuals gain greater capacity to navigate life, to be able to communicate effectively, so they're not frustrated, or to learn life skills are really essential. So me being the best person and compassionate person as I create trainings and I create programs and I create the training environment for that organization is a part of me, and it's a part of my empathy. So this is a time for our society for people to really live their values. And if
Yes.
you care about life, when you transgender, gay, whatever, children now, young girls are having higher suicide rates. You want to give support to children. You want to give support to veterans. You want to give support to people in need.
Yes. And so reach out to Melonya if you're interested in what that would look like, because where she's targeting really is the employee side. Because you can't have compassion for people if you are burnt out, if you're struggling with your own needs, especially if you're working in a caregiver role. And we're going to see upticks of people feeling like the resources aren't there. Who do they reach out to? How do they support groups where, in the past we were struggling anyways, in many situations? And the healthcare, caregiver roles, education, there's high burnout rates because there is something about that type of work, that to say no to people in crisis because internally you might be burnt out or you don't have the resources and you're struggling yourself, feels doubly like a pain and a shame and a, oh my gosh, why can't I be there for these people who, I know I'm helping on a daily basis, but I just don't have the ability anymore. So Melonya is trying to target that issue and trying to come up with ways. And she has some statistical information from her organization from a survey they did. So really, this is sort of like, think of it as piloting it there, perhaps like piloting it there, and then creating something that we can be replicable at other organizations. Because like I said about, if we let this happen with this group, when I was talking about the suicide discussion, it's going to be happening everywhere. We're seeing things with nonprofits that are struggling to, kind of provide support for their employees. What is the new template going to be as the government pulls away from those who need support the most? So please reach out to her, and help her to create this, template that could become like, this is innovation, right? This is how this happens.
Yeah.
So I
Thank
really wanted to give the time to that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation today. I think it's been
I have too.
yeah, I think it's been a beautiful
Even if it gets banned, it's
Yeah,
definitely getting banned
I,
places.
I don't have any expectation of my stuff going anywhere. But if you hear this today, please share. And if there's something that I hope it inspires us to just do with our best during this time and sharing good information. So with that being said, I will see you next week.
I will see you next week. Yes.
Yes, maybe. I think so. We had a good time and hope you did too. Join us each Friday as we fill the brain drain one unscripted conversation at a time. Like, subscribe, and share. Help us spread our reach on YouTube. Until next Friday, stay tuned.